OK, moving on. Donald Trump's foreign policy is in the spotlight after a series of interventions and withdrawals. We've had Syrian missile attacks, the Iran nuclear deal's gone, we've got the upcoming North Korea summit talks, and last night the Donald thanked North Korea for saying it would dismantle its nuclear test site. I'm asking, have you been impressed by Trump's foreign policy so far? And if you think no, he's just got lucky, then call me on 0345 6060 973. Maybe you think, yep, he's gone way beyond what I thought he'd do, and you can text to 84850. Or maybe you think his undiplomatic style has produced surprising results, in which case tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. We'll continue talking about Dame Tessa Jowell, who died overnight, and watch us on Facebook. When Donald Trump got elected, there was this feeling that America was going to withdraw from the rest of the world. The America First message meant they weren't going to engage with anybody. They were going to withdraw from everything, and America would become like Noddy Land. Actually, the opposite's happened. Because in many ways, I think we're talking more about what Trump has done in terms of foreign policy than we're talking about what he's done in terms of domestic policy. Now, his style is, well, how can I put it? Unconventional. Not exactly what one would expect normally in terms of international diplomacy, and one thinks of the tweets about Rocket Man in North Korea and all the rest of it. But the one thing for certain is he's been pretty active. Just think about it. There have been a couple of missile strikes in Syria. There's the cancellation of the Iran nuclear deal, which of course he had promised to do in the run-up to the election. And in Singapore next month, he's going to meet Kim Jong-un, and they're going to talk about whether they can denuclearize the Korean peninsula. So and overnight, that was added to by the news that North Korea say they're going to dismantle their nuclear test site. So on the face of it, I think he's exceeded expectations, and I'm going to ask you this morning, do you think that Trump has been impressive on the foreign stage? If you think, no, it's just down to luck, then call me on 0345 6060 973. Maybe you agree with me and say he's gone way beyond what anyone thought possible, in which case text to 84850. Maybe like me, you think it's time that he got a nomination for the Nobel Peace Prize, or maybe you don't. Let me know on Twitter by using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and we'll talk more in this hour about Dame Tessa Jowell. But for now, let's get an opinion. Let's go to Stephen Erlanger, Chief Diplomatic Correspondent for the New York Times, and not Stephen, as a newspaper, Trump's biggest cheerleaders.
No, we're trying to be as objective as possible. As you know, sometimes that's hard, but we do our best.
Well, then be objective, Stephen. Tell me. I mean, am I right?
Analytical. Analytical is the word.
Analytical.
Yeah,
no, that's fine. Right. But it is true, Stephen, isn't it, that when he took over, people thought that in terms of diplomacy, that America was going to withdraw from the world stage. That has not been the case, has it?
It's not been the case, but I'm not sure that's what we expected. When he said America first, it wasn't America by itself. It was American interests first. In other words, he would reinterpret America's relations with the rest of the world primarily from America's interests and not necessarily multilateral interests or Europe's interests or anyone else's interests. In other words, it was time, he felt, for America to stop being a wimp in the world and be taken advantage of by its allies and assert its national interests. I think that's actually what we expected, and that's pretty much what we're getting. Don't you think?
Well, I think he's... no, I think what's happened with North Korea actually has surprised everybody, to be honest with you. I
agree with that.
When it comes to the Iran nuclear deal, he'd said from the start that it was a dumb deal, that it wasn't working, and the fact that he's withdrawn from it, I think actually it would have been a betrayal of his voting base if he hadn't. But it's on North Korea that I'm genuinely interested. I mean, is he now getting some credit at the New York Times and elsewhere?
He is. No, without question. The thing about North Korea is his blustery negotiating style works sometimes, particularly when you can scare people. And what he did in two ways, it wasn't just Kim that he scared, he also scared Xi Jinping and the Chinese. And what has worked best for Trump, I think, is that he's gotten China to pay real attention to North Korea and to try to rein it in. The Chinese sanctions, which are much intensified under Trump pressure, have, I think, been what has turned Kim around. And also, let's be honest, Kim has nuclear weapons and he has missiles. It's not like Iran, which was developing them. He already has them. So the big challenge for Trump, and we'll see what happens, I mean, maybe he will succeed, I hope he does, is to get North Korea to agree to denuclearize, which is the Trump desiderata, but with enough inspection and assurance that Kim doesn't do what North Korea has done twice before, which is promise to denuclearize and then not do it.
How would you analyse the prospect after Singapore of Western money actually being invested and going into North Korea?
I think it will be, not surprisingly, a stage-by-stage thing. It'll get complicated. It won't be very quick. I mean, I think what they need to do is lay out, and I think Trump understands this, and John Bolton certainly understands this. They need to lay out a stage-by-stage. You do this, and we'll do this. You do this, and we'll do this, because there's a lot to denuclearize. There's a lot to dismantle. Now, his testing area, as you say, he's making a big show of getting rid of, but it's collapsed. So it's kind of like, showing you the ruins of a building and saying, see, this building is no longer in use, so congratulations.
Yeah. It was kind of a little sweetener overnight, I guess.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
I mean, Kim has, I think, played it very well. I think Trump so far played it very well. I mean, it is dangerous. North Korea has been dangerous. If Trump can, make it undangerous, I think it's wonderful. I mean, what I would expect to see, in a way, we always thought a peace treaty at long last between the two Koreas would come at the end of a long process, and it feels like maybe that will come at the beginning. I mean, if Trump can announce, agreement in principle on a peace treaty between North and South, with some security guarantees and serious high-level talks on denuclearization stage by stage in return for economic help and so on, I think that would be a tremendous success.
No, it certainly would. And Stephen, help me with the most difficult question on foreign policy, Russia and Vladimir Putin. Because, I mean, he goes through the election, he says, look, I want to meet Putin, I want to talk to Putin, I want to have a better understanding between us, and he did say it may not work, but actually, there appears to be a fair degree of hysteria towards Putin and Russia in Washington, D.C. these days.
Well, there is. I mean, there's no question there's a kind of Russophobia. I mean, it's not like Putin's behaved very well, but I mean, what Trump, I think, came in wanting to do, and I had no problem with this in principle, was for the first time, let's say, since 1917, and Western support for the whites, the counter-revolutionaries, the United States was going to say, look, we don't care what you do at home, Mr. Putin. You want to screw your journalists, you want to put people in jail, you want to be an oligarch, fine. We don't care. It's not our interest. What interests us is, what do you want and what do we want? What are your interests? What are our interests? Now, in principle, that was fine. The problem is, the Mueller investigation, the alleged collusion with the Russians for the campaign has poisoned the atmosphere so much that I think it's just been impossible for Trump to do it. And also, frankly, some Russian activities in Syria, etc., have not made the White House very happy either. But
so that just
I had no problem with the start.
That relationship goes nowhere, Stephen, in your view? Or?
Well, I don't think it does. I know he wants to meet him, and he may invite him to the White House or go to the Kremlin, but the problem is right now the relationship is so poisoned, and Russia is, I don't know whether you agree, but, you see it acting in lots of ways to undermine the EU, to create fissures with Hungary, Poland, Czech, Slovaks. It's interfered to some degree rather clumsily in elections in France and Germany. It is manipulating fissures that are already there, and it is a revisionist power. It hates what the Cold War the end of the Cold War brought to Russia, it wants to reverse it. And that is creating tension.
I don't think there's any prospect of very good relations developing with Putin's Russia, with America, Europe, or anybody soon. And finally, Stephen, let me ask you straight. Has Trump, as a president, exceeded your very low expectations on the New York Times in terms of his foreign policy?
Well, I would speak for the New York Times, but I think, I'll say why I'm ambivalent. One, on Korea, I think let's see what happens. It's fine. Let's hope it works. It would be a big help. On the Middle East, I don't think, his plans going anywhere. I think he's sided too heavily with the Sunnis, with the Saudis, with Sisi in Egypt, with Bibi Netanyahu. The U.S. is no longer considered a kind of even-handed broker in the Middle East. And what worries me is, his disgust for NATO, his disgust for the European Union, which I know you may share, Nigel, at least to some degree.
He and I may just have discussed this once or twice, Stephen.
Of course, this is right. And also his undermining of the WTO, I don't think works very well. I mean, the World Trade Organization, that has to work by rules. I mean, it's okay. The Europeans also don't like what China's doing, but to do it unilaterally will punish the Europeans when, in fact, the U.S. and the Europeans could get together through the WTO to renegotiate deals. So I'm ambivalent, but yes, on certain things he has absolutely exceeded my newspaper's expectations.
Thank you. Stephen Erlanger, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And that was the chief diplomatic correspondent from the New York Times saying that Donald Trump has exceeded expectations. And I never thought I'd hear that from the New York Times, who have been very, very strongly opposed to Trump in virtually every single way. I think he's surprising people. Do you agree with me? If you do, call 0345 6060 973. If you don't, if actually you think he's blundering and making too many mistakes, then text to 84850. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive in LBC. Well, Stephen Erlanger, the chief diplomatic correspondent of the New York Times, when discussing Trump's foreign policy, made mention of the views of John Bolton. And Bolton, of course, has just become the national security advisor to Trump in Washington, D.C. And if you want to hear a bit more from John Bolton, the man himself, then check out my podcast, Farage Against the Machine, available on iTunes and on Android devices, and you can get more information at lbc.co.uk. But there is an interview there between myself and John Bolton when he lays out his world view. And it was interesting, wasn't it, to get somebody from the New York Times saying, yes, actually Trump has exceeded expectations. And the news overnight that came from North Korea, that they were actually going to be dismantling, their nuclear site. Some have said, well, actually, the thing was out of date and possibly rather damaged anyway. But either way, as we head towards this big historic meeting in Singapore next month, both sides are showing each other quite a lot of love. I don't know what's going to come out of it, but I do think the whole thing is quite remarkable. Let's go to Mark in Camden. Mark, has Trump exceeded your expectations or not?
Yes, he has exceeded them, Nigel, but I'd just like to say that I voted for you in 2015, and you were the best Prime Minister since Margaret Thatcher that sadly this country didn't get.
Oh, that's very sweet of you, Mark. Very sweet of you, but I did my best. I did all I could, but I do think in some ways I was able to precipitate this big earthquake in British politics, which isn't over yet. But what I couldn't do, Mark, was to break the first past the post electoral system. It is so difficult unless you're a party with a regional base, or a party with all working class support or all middle class support. The system is virtually unbreakable, and I find that frustrating, Mark. I also think it leads to total negativity in British politics. My rosette's red, therefore I'm good, you're blue and you're bad, and vice versa. And I do feel our electoral system gives us very, very negative politics.
I agree, Nigel. It needs to be changed. So, but sorry, I went off topic there. But
you did, and you dragged me off on a tangent because you struck at a subject close to my heart. Now, when Donald Trump came to power, what was your view of him on the world stage?
I respect the man greatly. If I was an American, I'd be a Republican, and I would have voted for him. I like the no-nonsense approach, but moreover, I'm impressed with the results. It's hard to say what I really expected of him, during the campaign itself. I didn't know sufficiently enough about him, to be honest, to really have formed a greatly accurate opinion. But I think Obama was all talk and no action. We had a lot of sort of ineffective and wishy-washy policies that didn't particularly yield anything at all. And I'm going along with the narrative that Trump's achieved more, in his time in office now for like 18 months than Obama has in 8 years.
Well, that's certainly what I buy into, Mark. Absolutely. Mark, thank you for that. I'm going to move on to Rose, who's calling from Chiswick. Good morning, Rose.
Good morning.
So how do you see Trump's achievements on foreign policy?
Well, I'd like to speak about the Middle East particularly.
Yep.
And I think it's an utter disgrace that he is opening his American embassy in Jerusalem. Under Security Resolution 181 of 1947, it said that Jerusalem should be established as a corpus separatum.
Yes.
Under UK Security Resolution 478, it affirmed that the enactment of the 1980 Jerusalem law was a violation of international law. So therefore, he is violating international law. And the other thing that I would like to mention, by trying to get Assad out, does he really, really want ISIS to be the leaders of Syria? Because there is a power vacuum there, and his policies are incredibly dangerous.
Rose, I have to say, I think that we in the West are very, very conflicted over Assad. In 2013, the British government lost a vote in the House of Commons, thank goodness in my view, where we were actually going to arm the rebels, and we may well, Rose, have turned out arming people who were ISIS. So I think we are very, very confused.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're very confused and conflicted on that.
I do not, under any circumstances, want those butchers to be, leading Syria. I don't want them.
No, and you see Assad as the lesser of two evils, yeah?
Yeah, Assad is a disgusting dictator. He's an evil man, but he is not ISIS.
Yeah, no, I do understand that completely. On the point about the US Embassy in Jerusalem, and
Yes.
Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner will be there
Yes.
for the opening this week. I would say this to you, Rose. President George W. Bush promised in the run-up to the referendum that he would move the American embassy to Jerusalem and never did so. Bill Clinton promised he would move the embassy to Jerusalem and never did so. Donald Trump promised he would move the embassy to Jerusalem, and in true Donald style, he's actually doing it. So I think in terms of, as you say, international law, if you clearly say what you're going to do, you put it to the electorate and you do it, I don't think that of itself is illegitimate, but it might be seen as provocative.
May I say one other thing, which disgusts me?
Mm-hmm.
Not one. I listen to LBC every day, all day, for hours and hours and hours.
Right.
Not once has the unarmed conflict in Gaza been mentioned by LBC, and the lives of the Palestinians being lost, and they are unarmed. And I think it is absolutely disgusting that you guys haven't mentioned it once. Not once. 5,500 people have been wounded, and over 75 have been killed with tear gas, white phosphorus.
I'm very surprised.
And not once
well,
LBC mentioned it.
Rose, I am surprised. Given the breadth of debate that happens on this radio station, I'm surprised to hear you say that, and I would be also surprised if it hadn't been. But look, there are lots and lots of topics for us to discuss. I tell you what, Rose, let's try a different tack with you on Trump. Do you think he's performed impressively with regards relations with North Korea and Kim Jong-un?
I think he has, but I don't think it's entirely him. I don't think it's entirely his doing. I think there's a lot of work being done in the background, and I think that he's taking all the praise for it. And I do not, under any circumstances, believe that he should be nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, he's done more than Obama ever did, Rose.
Well, that's very true. But in order to get a Nobel Peace Prize, he needs to look at all his other foreign policy, which at the moment is disgusting.
All right, Rose from Chiswick, some very strong views from West London this morning there. Let's go up to the Lake District, to Frederick. Good morning.
Hi, Nigel. I just want to discuss maybe a strategy that Trump's actually employing, which is called the madman theory.
Yeah, go on.
This is a political theory that's actually quite commonly associated with Richard Nixon's foreign policy in Vietnam.
Yep.
So it was his attempt to make himself look very volatile and irrational, to make those leaders think that they shouldn't provoke the United States and should actually take a different tactic. So when it came to Obama, his foreign policy was to just think, it's just not worth the hassle with North Korea, and we should just leave them alone, and it will be dealt with in the past, and nothing will change. However, with Trump, he's completely changed that foreign policy, and now it seems like he's actually employing that madman theory to make them seem like actually the U.S. is a bit more crazy than this time, than it could actually respond. And so North Korea is actually starting to look, they just want to survive in the end.
Frederick, I had Stephen Erlanger on the show earlier, chief diplomatic correspondent for the New York Times, and he said that North Korea were a bit scared of Trump. So that kind of goes along with what you're saying, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. So Trump's now employing this theory, which actually might be a bit less effective than Nixon's, because, Nixon had tried to give the impression that he'd been, pushed too far and he would return to his sense of the Soviets, and the North Vietnamese actually gave in. But whereas if the North Korean government might actually not think that, it's unlikely to believe that, because that Trump would do the same, because, as at this point, Trump's threats are, standing operating procedure for him, and it's not actually a temporary emotional reaction. And it's all just words at this point. However, it does just seem that North Korea at this point just wants to survive, and therefore Trump has provoked them into making a decision that actually, we're not, they were never going to go with war to the US, because they would have been wiped out, especially seeing as China would then have lost they'd not given them any support, and so, because China,
so it's working, Frederick. It is working, isn't it? The strategy is working.
Yeah, it is working. However, Trump's irrational reactions, to North Korea, especially on Twitter, have now provoked other countries into seeking to make this a bit less hostile, with China and South Korea being the key parts. However, Trump was the one that provoked it. However, it's very, you can't say this much. It's a very wise theory to go through.
Frederick, let me ask you, straight, has Trump exceeded your expectations in terms of his achievements on foreign policy?
No, he's met them, actually.
He met them. All right. Fine. Frederick, thank you very much indeed. And Frederick pointing out the madman theory, one employed by Richard Nixon, that if you threaten something and people think you're crazy enough actually to do it, well, whatever reason he's got the North Koreans to the negotiating table, I don't care what they are. I just think it's a very, very good thing. Nigel, I'm not surprised by the Donald. He's destined to succeed. His personality may be flawed, but what a character, says Hannah. Well, I think, like him or dislike him, we'd all agree on one thing. Oh, what a character. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show. The world is relentlessly discussing Donald Trump's foreign policy decisions. And one of the criticisms over the last week or two is he's working really hard to come to a nuclear deal with North Korea, and yet he's just scrapped a nuclear deal with Iran. And one or two people asking, what's the big picture strategy? What's the thinking behind this? Actually, I think Trump looks at things deal on deal. He looks at things in terms of their individual cases. I think with Iran, and of course the European Union are horrified, because they thought Obama was absolutely great. But Obama, I'm going to argue Obama got Iran very badly wrong. When this deal was struck, Obama actually said, he hoped that they could continue to have new conversations with Iran and to incentivize them to behave differently in the region, to be less aggressive, less hostile, more cooperative in resolving issues like Syria or what's happening in Iraq, or to stop them encouraging the Houthis in Yemen. That was the optimism that Obama had with the Iran deal. And in fact, by freeing up $150 billion of Iranian assets that have been seized. All that actually happened was Iran behaved worse right across the region, and they want to spread that evil doctrine of their appalling regime that is running that country. And I think what Trump really wants, above all, with Iran, is he would like the European Union, that includes us, of course, he would like us to change our policy. He would like to see regime change in Iran. Now, you could argue that regime change in Iraq has led to years of misery. You could argue that regime change in Libya has actually been a disaster. But I have to say, for my money, I would love to see regime change in Iran. It's a country with amazing potential. I think he's right on that. But tell me I'm wrong. You can do it very easily. You just call 0345 6060 973, and provided the language is clean, you can come on LBC and say whatever you want. And I like this tweet I've got from Luke. Trump is doing what he said he would do, and people are shocked and surprised. Why? It's why he got elected in the first place. Luke, I agree with that. You know, Trump is moving the Israeli embassy to Jerusalem. Shock, horror. This is dreadful. He promised the people he'd do it. Trump is cancelling the Iran nuclear deal. Shock, horror. But again, he promised people he'd do it. And I think, actually, standing up at elections and telling him what you're going to do and then doing it does somewhat restore faith in voting and in the democratic process, whether you agree with what's being done or not. Sylvia is calling from Putney. Good morning, Sylvia.
Hello, Nigel.
So, how's he doing?
Well, I love Trump.
Oh, do you? And do you tell your friends that, Sylvia?
Well, yes, a lot of us, we all think he's great. I listen to this, not your programme, but the whole of the LBC, day in and day out. And
right.
The men that ring in, they absolutely hate him. I think it's jealousy, personally.
Jealousy? So men are jealous of Trump, do you think?
I think so.
Oh.
Because he's done things that they secretly would like to do.
What, because he's got lots of money and very pretty wife and...
Lots of women and...
Lots of women? What are you saying about the American president? Well, I tell you what, Sylvia, we'll park that to one side.
Yeah.
But okay, so were you a fan of Trump all the way through?
Well, I didn't give it much thought. But looking at the whole thing, he doesn't indulge in the politics of appeasement, which gets you nowhere, because nobody is offended, but nothing gets done. That's what Mrs May is doing. And I've noticed that his detractors are becoming rather quiet, although I think secretly they're hoping he's going to fail. And I'm looking forward to seeing him shaking hands with Kim Jong-un.
Yes, absolutely.
On the steps of somewhere or other, maybe the White House or somewhere like that. And I think in time, further down the line, we're going to see him shaking hands with the leader of Iran. I think something will turn up there. And
well, that would be very surprising.
I know.
But then, actually, almost everything he does is surprising. So I think the difference is here that the Iranian regime actually want to spread their religious doctrine across the whole of the rest of that region. And I think that makes meeting very difficult. But Sylvia, thank you for your call. And Sylvia there from Putney, a big Trump supporter. And there are quite a lot of you out there that are big Trump supporters. Alex is calling from Finchley. Good morning, Alex.
Hi, Nigel. Of all the things that I disagree with you about the most, this is one of them.
Okay.
One of the biggest, because Trump is actually causing total instability throughout the region. And he's making the Iranian people suffer more than most. And I've got a suspicion that this isn't about regime change or anything like that. It's about anything for Trump is how to make money, and he's making enough money out of all this to last him and his the cohorts still years and years.
Alex, I don't think making money is top of Mr. Trump's agenda right at this moment in time. If he wanted to make money, he'd have carried on doing what has been just about the most successful reality TV show the world's ever seen. He would have made a lot more money carrying on doing that than being US president, wouldn't he?
Well, I mean, he's not going to make money directly. It's indirect money. I mean, look at the price of oil. Since it's come into power, it's gone up billions.
Well,
don't know
oil is.
who,
Last time I looked, Alex, oil was about $77 a barrel, 3.5-year highs. That certainly has happened. But do you? I mean, Alex, tell me, do you think that the Iran nuclear deal was working?
Look, it's not that it was working; it was a deal that was done. Now,
well, deals can be changed, Alex.
The regime I'm not a fan of the regime. What the problem with the West is that they're duplicitous. And what they do is that, for example, all the children of all these rulers and ayatollahs are living freely in the UK and the US.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is studying nuclear physics in the US. So when you tell me that, the US...
Is that really true?
Yes, it is.
Goodness me. Okay.
Yeah, so it's rubbish. I mean, absolute nonsense. The people that are suffering are the Iranian people. And what's happened is that the cost of goods in Iran has trebled in the past 6 months.
But Alex, isn't the truth of it, the people of Iran have been suffering now for 39 years under this extremist ideology that dominates that regime?
Yeah, but at the same time, don't let the West support them. Stop the West from supporting them. So if they continue,
all right, Alex, let me try this on you. Let me try this on you. All right, Trump's pressure on China meant that the sanctions China was putting on North Korea were perhaps for the first time real sanctions. North Korea was seriously hurting. That, above all, is the reason that Kim Jong-un is coming to the table and making conciliatory noises, okay? If that same principle is applied to Iran, and, remember last December, last January, we did see protests and, an upwelling of a movement that wanted to get rid of that regime. If those same tough pressures are applied to Iran, I do accept that in the short term, that makes the lives of average Iranians even worse than it is already. But if that was to bring about, a toppling of that regime, wouldn't that ultimately be the best thing for 80 million Iranian people?
I know, Nigel, but who do you want to replace them at the moment? There is no, like Iraq. You see, the problem with
anyone that's not, Alex, anybody that is not an extreme Islamic fundamentalist is my answer.
No, but John Bolton is a supporter of MKD or whatever they're called.
Yeah, and
they are the most fundamentalist people. Their people come and burn themselves in Knightsbridge, for God's sake.
Mm-hmm.
So I cannot...
No easy answers, no. Alex, would you credit Trump with anything that he's got right on foreign policy?
No, because in the end, what's happened... I'm in the currency market myself.
Yep.
So I am seeing the total devastation of the US dollar. People are turning away from the US dollar.
I know, Alex, I'm sorry. There is not a total devastation of the US dollar, is there?
Long term, there will be.
Hang on a second. I'm not having that, all right? You can predict the stock markets will crash, you can predict whatever you like, but your statement about the dollar actually, to be honest with you, Alex, Trump would like the dollar to be weaker than it is. That would suit his book economically.
Look, Nigel, the problem with Trump's policies and the US policy under Obama was that they've turned away people from using the US dollar. That's the main issue, that people are not willing to trade in US dollar because they fall under ludicrous US laws. So therefore, they are willing to trade in any other currency.
Yeah, I do accept that in terms of reserve currencies, other currencies have gained ground against the dollar over the course of time, but maybe with the growth of the East, that was inevitable. Alex, I'm going to have to love you and leave you. Thank you very much. Alex there doesn't want to credit McDonald with anything, but Dave from Croydon says, I agree with everything on Trump. He's got the guts to call it like it is. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show. Well, we had the sad, unexpected, but sad news overnight of the death of Dame Tessa Jowler. We've been talking a bit about her and her achievements with the London Olympics in particular, but trying to find out a little bit more about her as a person. And to help me with that is Scarlett Maguire, former communications advisor to the Labour Party and somebody who knew Tessa for 25 years. Good morning, Scarlett.
Good morning.
Tell us about, all we ever see in politics, really, we see the politician battling against the other side, or sometimes even battling against their own side. Tell us about Tessa Jowler, the person, please.
Well, I mean, the thing about Tessa, and it's within her politics and without it, is, I mean, she wanted to make Britain a better place. That's why she went into politics. Before that, she was a social worker. And actually, the whole way that she dealt with her death was about saying, you know, more people should be given proper treatment for cancer. So in fact, what you saw as the public person was also the very private person, was that she did think a lot about how to do better for other people.
And she very much seemed, in terms of philosophy, to be, I mean, very close to Tony Blair in many ways, leading up to that amazing victory in 1997.
Yeah, I mean, she was very close to Tony Blair. Before 97, he made her shadow women's minister and said, you know, Tessa, you've got to win women over for me. I think she told a lot of us that she would go under a bus for Tony Blair. She really, really, I mean, she believed in his politics, but also she really, really respected him as a person. And he paid her back. I mean, he certainly has been wonderful about the cancer. He obviously made her Secretary of State for Culture, and she did the Olympics with him. I think when we're talking about her as a person, also what's really important, I mean, she was totally in love with her husband, but also, I mean, her two children, who I knew because our children all went to the same school, the local comprehensive. I mean, she absolutely idolised her children, and she would have put her children before any job, I can tell you that.
I wonder how she's managed this one achievement, Scarlett. You know, Tony Blair, we just talked about at length, and Blair, of course, there are people that respect Blair enormously, but there are quite a lot of people who dislike Blair intensely, and you could apply the same to David Cameron and people who've been at cabinet level and in the front line of politics. They have detractors for years and years and years to come. You know, they just do. It kind of goes with the territory. And yet, Tessa Jowell doesn't seem to have attracted that.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the things that, although she was absolutely Labour to the core, let's get this straight, but actually she could make friends on the other side. I mean, Tim Shipman, who's now on the Sunday Times, was on the Mail, said, you know, she was one of those politicians who didn't hate the other side. And certainly when she was made a dame, and I went to her sort of celebration thing in the House of Lords, there were an awful lot of Conservatives there, and there were a lot of you know, Conservative journalists. So she stretched out to other people to try and get. I mean, what Tessa really, really wanted was to get things done, and particularly in the last, you know, from the Olympics, once she stood down as. Even as culture minister, she was reaching out to people like Seb Coe, who was next Conservative minister, to try and get things moving. And what Tessa thought was, you know, it's all about the end. It's all about making a difference. It's all about getting there.
Well, I must say, I think that comment, that she didn't hate the other side, I think we need a lot more of that in our politics in this country and perhaps across many other parts of the Western world. Scarlett McGuire, thank you very much for joining us and giving us that personal insight into who the real Tessa Jowell was. Thank you. And it is remarkable. You know, normally, when you've been at a top level in politics, there's a group of people out there who will hate you forever, and Tessa Jowell managed to avoid that. Perhaps the Olympics had a bit to do with it, because not only was it amazing that we won the bid to host the Olympics, but they were a massive success as well. Back to Trump and his foreign policy, and Mac asks me on Twitter, what I don't understand is why Trump pulls out of Iran because he hates the deal, yet seems to be offering North Korea a similar opportunity. Maybe it's because US businesses can prosper. Mac, I'll tell you what it is, matey. In the case of North Korea, he genuinely thought that Kim Jong-un posed a threat to the world. He absolutely, in his soul, believed that, and will do anything he can to try and denuclearize them. In the case of Iran, I think what he sees is a regime that actually is very, very weak. They're hanging on But as we saw from the protests in December and January, you know, things are not very stable there. And he sees them as being weak. He sees them as being without weapons that can pose a genuine threat to... I mean, that's not to say there won't be confrontation with Israel, but, he doesn't see them as posing a threat to world peace, and I think he hopes he can bring the regime down, and I think that's a reasonable insight into how he sees both of these things. Phil says the US have the right to put their embassy where they want, with reference to Jerusalem. Bitar is joining me from Finsbury Park. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel Fred.
Good morning. So, how is Trump doing? Give him marks out of 10.
Very well. Just want to thank him. He made the right decision. I'm calling you on behalf of all the Iranians. We thank him. He's done the right decision to pull his nuclear atomic. How we can trust a regime, dictator regime, which is killing its own people, to not come and kill us. Obama give Iran so much money, and they all spend it on a Hamas and a terrorist forces and the Middle East.
Okay.
And killing its own people. How we can trust its dictator?
So Beta, he's done the right thing, scrapping that Iran nuclear deal. Yeah.
Right thing, and we thank him.
Okay. Thank you. So it's not a good line, Bitar. It's a shame, actually. Thank you. Bitar was there speaking on behalf of all Iranian people. She's not actually the spokesman for all Iranian people. But it has been interesting, actually, over the course of the last week, just looking at callers and texters and tweeters, there are quite a lot of, I'm going to sort of say this, from the sample I've seen, there are a lot of Iranians living in the UK and the US who think Trump has done the right thing, even though in the short term, it will make life for ordinary Iranians even more difficult than it already is. Vanessa is calling from High Wycombe. Good morning, Vanessa.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to speak to you. I've never spoken to you before.
Well, I'm very pleased to speak to you. And tell me, is Trump doing better than people thought he would?
You know what, Nigel, I was going to start off by saying I wasn't a Trump lover, but I'm one of those dying breeds that respects democracy. So, that America elected him, so that's fine by me. When he first announced this, I sort of thought, what an idiot. That's going to cause all sorts of trouble. And now I've been listening to LBC all week as your previous caller, and every Iranian person that I've heard calling.
It's funny, I just said that. Yeah.
Exactly what I was called in to say.
Yeah, and we had phone calls.
Has said he's done it wrong.
We had phone calls, Vanessa, from America onto my midweek show from Iranians, again saying much the same thing. And I wonder whether Boris Johnson, and sadly we're not, Vanessa, pursuing a very independent foreign policy here. We're doing it, in conjunction with the EU. I wonder whether it's time for us to rethink our position.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were independent again, Nigel? Wouldn't it be nice?
Well,
if people actually listened to what we wanted, even that would be nice.
Well, yes, I mean that's a separate subject. But the Prime Minister overnight has told us we must trust her, but she may need our help. So you may get a chance to vote on that again. So Vanessa, you wouldn't call yourself a Trump fan, but he's doing okay, yeah?
I'm open, and he's changed my mind, or the Iranian people that have phoned in have changed.
Yeah, okay, that's very, very interesting. No, very interesting. Vanessa, thank you for that. Yep, no. Lots of Iranians ringing in saying he has done the right thing. Messages galore. You saw something in Trump from day one that others didn't, Nigel. What was it? Asked Jackie in Watford. What I saw was somebody who was rough and tough, unafraid to cause offence, and who wanted to bring about genuine change. And you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. Sometimes you need people in life who are going to say it as it is, and who are not scared of criticism. And I saw that in Trump. What I also saw in Trump were that his instincts on the big stuff were right. He understood that artificial, false, supranational governments like the European Union were simply not what ordinary people wanted. They want to live in countries. They like flags. They want their own football teams. He got that stuff. I think he also understood when he saw what was happening in Brussels and Paris and other European cities. He genuinely did not want America to become like that, and he wanted a tough immigration policy to try and prevent it. So for all of those things, I thought Trump was the right person. What I wasn't sure about, was exactly how he would handle foreign affairs. But from the moment he flew to Riyadh for his first ever foreign trip, I think he has exceeded all expectations. I think he's right, absolutely right, about Iran. I wish he'd helped broker a deal between Dublin and London on the Irish border. Now, that really would be something, wouldn't it? Perhaps we should ask him when he comes over here on the 12th of July. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show.